welcome back to 6 and 6, where we cover 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. With that said, start your timer. We start today in Europe, where Italian police have begun cracking down on mafia operations on the island of Sicily. From BBC, quote, more than 1,200 officers were involved in the operation, which the military Carbonetti force said was aimed at dismantling the area's mafia. The raids, the biggest for several years, have been seen as a bid for Italian authorities to stop the mafia rebuilding its governing body known as the Capola. A number of mafia bosses have been released from jail in recent months on appeal, but investigators say those still behind bars have used encrypted messaging phones to continue their activities, end quote. Next, we travel to South America, where there have been new developments in a story we covered last month involving the Catholic Church. From the AP, Pope Francis on Tuesday accepted the resignation of an influential Peruvian bishop who has come under criticism for not doing enough to stop abuses committed by the conservative Catholic movement that was recently disbanded by the Vatican. Peru's Bishop Conference said Archbishop Miguel Cabarroles from the Diocese of Trujillo will be replaced by the Jesuit Bishop Gilberto Vizcarra. During the time that the Archbishop Cabarroles led the bishops' conference, the Peruvian-based Catholic movement Solidamente Christiae Vitae was accused of sexually abusing its recruits. Across the Atlantic in Africa, where there's an increasing costs that are directly hitting the people of Nigeria in their wallets. From BBC, quote, Nigeria's largest operator, MTN, trebled the cost of one of its most popular weekly offers. RDL was also increasing its tariffs. A price jump was expected as the telecom regulatory body had approved an increase, but in an announcement 3 weeks ago, it said that it was capped at 50%. The phone companies wanted to boost their revenue in order to cover rising costs. Nigeria is experiencing the worst economic crisis in a generation, as the rise in inflation caused by the war in Ukraine was exacerbated when in 2023 President Bola Tinubu's government dropped the fuel subsidy. The authorities also followed a policy of currency devaluation, end quote. And to make sure you understand, it is data costs that they're mainly worried about. These data plans have become extremely expensive for the average Nigerian. Next, in the Caribbean, where Puerto Rico is receiving extra scrutiny from a international body about a fraudulent operation happening on its shores. From the AP, an international bank based on Puerto Rico has been sued for fraud over an alleged scheme that the authorities say led to the loss of more than $90 million in deposits, affecting hundreds of clients in the U.S., Venezuela, and elsewhere. In October 2017, the office found serious fraudulent and managerial deficiencies, and in March 2023, it presented notice with voluntary liquidation alternatives, but after receiving multiple claims from depositors related to Notice, that's the bank, Notice's refusal to complete fund transfers requested by them in amounts totaling millions of dollars, the lawsuit stated. Across the Pacific and Asia, the previous leader of the Bangladeshi government is being investigated for their attempts to stop protests before they fled the country. From BBC, the former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her government tried to cling to power using systematic and deadly violence against protesters that could amount to crimes against humanity, the UN said. UN human rights investigators accused the deposed government of a brutal response to the mass opposition last year, in which they said 1,400 people had been killed, mostly by security forces. Quote, among our key findings were that there were reasonable grounds to believe the officials of the former government and its security intelligence apparatus together had violent elements that were associated with the former ruling party and committed serious systematic human rights violations. And finally, we go to Australia, where a population of elephants has been moving on the continent recently. From AP, a herd of 9 Asian elephants have been clocking up miles over the past 5 days after being relocated from the Melbourne Zoo to a new enclosure in the Webury Open Range Zoo. And that's the end of the quote there. But if you want to see the video, there will be a link directly into the description below the like and subscribe button, just like any of the other articles where you can find all of this information. You can go read it for yourself. If you want to find this episode on Spotify, Podcast, Podvine, those links will also be in the description. And if you want to listen to the normal podcast that comes out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can find that here on the YouTube channel or on the RSS feed. And with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.